This is a Raven test. And you can take it online and you start and it'll last. I'll just do one. And as you see, each one you do, it gets harder. I'm not doing it because I have to look and think and take longer. But as you go along, it gets harder. And harder and harder. And I think there's like 60 something. Now, 99% of the people can't get them all right. That's why if you get them all right, you're the top 1%. Okay, and if you do get them all right, you have to go and take what you call the Titan test. Then it gets higher. In fact, the Raven test can only test up to like 135, 140. I got everything right on this test. Okay, and I'm not bragging. I'm trying to make a point. I ended up having to take a Titan test. Now, due to my circumstances, I'm not allowed to know the results. But I did accidentally saw some confidential papers and saw that my IQ averaged 134. Now, knowing that my vocabulary what it is, due to the fact I don't get everything right on that test, you can do the math, and that means that my metric IQ is tested as high as 172. Now, only reason I'm saying that, not to brag, but hopefully motivate you to think that there's a possibility that because of that fact, which I know it is a fact, there is a possibility that I see a pattern that nobody else sees in what's going on right now. Okay. And the reason I'm pointing that up is just because you don't see this pattern doesn't mean it's not there. I hate to break it to you, if you don't see this pattern, which is on the first 5, you're not very smart. Now, just because you don't see the patterns that I'm fixing to talk about doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means you're not, well, kind of superior IQ when it comes to the metric part. The reason I say that is because, well, on other areas I have a problem. Okay, I have a form of autism. So I'm not saying I'm the greatest, smartest person in the world. Just in certain areas, I test off the chart. Because I see patterns, real patterns that are there, that other people don't see. In other words, I can figure out things when other people can't figure it out. Now, there's other areas that people can do a lot better than I can, and I can't even function. So, I'm not saying I'm a great person. But what I'm fixing to explain to you is a situation that I believe every American needs to hear. Because if we continue down the road that we're continuing, America is going to fall. And honestly, America might fall anyway. But to fall with less impact, I believe America needs to listen to some of us who can see a pattern that other people don't see. The problem is, most of the people that are smart and that are in a position to do things, they've used their ability to figure out patterns, create patterns for their self-gain. Which brings us to Clinton. Clinton is a very intelligent woman. In fact, I'm pretty sure she gets everything right on the Raven test and has to take the Titan test. But Clinton is not a very good person. In fact, it is my opinion she is the most evilest woman that walked the face of the earth. Now, I hope you don't stop listening because I said that. Now, let's switch to Trump. Trump, I believe, has good intentions. But I don't think he gets everything right on the Raven test. Okay? I think he gets pretty high on the Raven test. But he can't even use that because he has a problem with social relativity. In other words, he only sees the patterns that are around him. And maybe because he don't want to, but he don't see the plight of minorities. Okay. He only sees their interaction with the white people. In other words, how it affects the white people. I, on the other hand, kind of step back and see the whole picture. Because one, I have the ability, well, because I test high on the Raven test. And two, I'm a biracial person with a biracial family. So, I have a perspective where I can step back and actually see, not only willing to step back and see the whole picture, have the ability to comprehend what I'm looking at. Now, that sounds like a bunch of rambling, but I'm trying to get to a point. I made a phone call to, I thought was the Black Panther, but as you can hear in the conversation, it's off a website where a whole bunch of people of color, these groups, kind of come together. I don't know much about them groups. I don't know that much about the white extreme group except for two, and it's Freedom Fighter Radio and RB. The only reason is because I contacted the Minuteman, and the Minuteman that I was part of the RB, who got me in touch with Freedom Fighter Radio. And then there's been a lot of infighting and break off because, well, we don't agree with the racist and the ludicrousness of the other groups. So we kind of broke off. I'm still in contact with Freedom Fighter, but basically just as, well, we've kind of created, I don't know, anyway, I still communicate with him, but it's hard to explain the relationship that me and Jim have, but I have been in contact with a lot of groups, and they know me, okay, and believe it or not, we have a lot in common. There are certain things that we disagree on. And the reason we disagree is because it's harder to find a pattern by yourself. But it's easier if somebody shows you the pattern. For instance, if you have an IQ of 112, I could probably teach you or show you the patterns that go up that test you to 135. But after 135, it starts getting so complicated that even if I tried to show it to you, you still wouldn't see it. So, you can be intelligent enough that if I show you the pattern, you could see it after I showed it to you. But you have to have somebody show it to you. So, if you are from one group, one minority group, you may not see the pattern of injustices like the person that's living in it, no matter what your IQ is. But the higher your IQ is, the more your ability is to understand the pattern of injustice of somebody else in a different minority group, whether you experience it or not. Now that may be complicated because of my communication skills, which is my weakness. But my point is, we are fixing to have a catastrophic event in the United States. If Hillary becomes president, or if Trump becomes president. Now, usually, I'm not a political person. Really, I'm not. I took political science in school because I liked law. But that's because I wanted to defend the underdog. But then I quit because I realized, well, I'm not a political person. Okay, and you have to be political to be a lawyer. It's not just you go in there and defend the underdog. I never even voted. I voted one time, and you ain't gonna believe it, I voted for Clinton. Yes, I was stupid. But it wasn't very long that I learned through experiences in life, they're not good people. I haven't voted since. I've never voted except when I was 18 years old. And I made the biggest mistake in my life by voting for Clinton. So, really, I'm not political. I get sucked into the political stuff because I was a victim of an injustice. And the only appropriate way is to get political, which I don't like being political. But getting in the streets and killing whitey is not the answer, okay? Or vice versa. We have got to start communicating about our race. I was raised white, I sound white, but I don't look white, okay? And no matter how I think, no matter how I sound and how the people that I relate to, the world doesn't see me as white. And that's how I become a victim of this cottage industry. My son was kept in a box for 3 years to the point his back is in the shape of the box. Now, unlike the other blacks and the blacks and Hispanics, not whites, because they just come in a few days and they were gone. Okay, the blacks and Hispanics that were in this institution, okay, were just 100% targeted for the money-making scheme that the Clintons started. Okay. But I was thrown in there to cover up something else related to the Clintons, which is classified. So I'm going to stay away from that. But I am going to talk about this system where we give incentives for social workers to go in and take children. Okay? And they take black, white, and Hispanics. Now, the whites end up adopted out and some on this thing called the Orgy Island. But the blacks and Hispanics are ending up in these institutions. Now, imagine a 3-year-old took to this institution, okay, and they're kept there. They're not allowed to go to school. Some of them kept in boxes. Some of them die from being smothered and restrained and sexually abused. You just would not believe it. They even feed these children dog food. This is a fact. This is not an allegation. This is not a conspiracy. I'm telling you that this is a fact. I got papers out the yin-yang and testimony, and you can give me a lie detector test that will prove this. This is a fact. And then, when they get 18 years old, they roll them over into the prison system, where they finally get 1 hour of sunlight. Yes, when they're under 18, they're not even required to give them 1 hour of sunlight, which is why my son ended up with ricket and aspirated the formation of him being kept in this box. Now, just because you're not smart enough to figure this out doesn't mean it ain't there. And just because the majority of the people don't get everything right on the Raven test, therefore can't figure this out, doesn't mean I'm going to give up. I just pray to God that I point out this pattern and that you believe me and that you will pass this around. Okay? I say we need martial law. Yes, I do in this thing. Not because we need more police, because we don't need the police. Okay? When my son escaped from this box and we went to Mexico, I lived in martial law in Mexico. Okay? Because the police were violating people's rights. It was the best relief we ever had was when they went under martial law, because it got the corrupt mother hunters off the street. They're still under martial law. But that's a third world country. But I tell you what, if I had to choose between being under martial law and going back to those out of control police officers, I picked martial law in Mexico. Now, my son's 18. We're able to come back here, and my country is all to pieces because of this Clinton. Because of her that I can't talk about because it's classified. And because of this cottage industry that she has created. Now, as a white person, I can understand why the whites feel the way they feel. Because of where they are on this social relativity, as I like to dub it. But the fact that I don't look white, even though I was raised white, and I encounter these injustices every day that the minorities do, believe me, I understand why the minorities feel the way they do. But what needs to be done is we need to communicate. And the people who are smart enough to figure out the pattern needs to try to show the people who aren't what the pattern is. And create a dialogue and hopefully create a trust between the ones of us who can understand them with the ones who can't. To take our word for it. We need something done. And we don't need Trump. And we don't need Clinton. Actually, I believe we need Jim Mattis. But most of you don't even know who he is. He is a military man that created the coin strategy. Okay? And believe me, we need the police off the streets. Temporarily. Okay? And yes, we need martial law because we need Clinton and the Bushes, the Richards and the Princes and all their buddies arrested. For one thing that I can say, and that is for the cottage industry. The other thing, what they really need to be arrested for, we're not allowed to talk about. Even the U.S. Attorney's offices is not talking about it as we've seen today. Okay, but America needs to wake up and we need to start communicating. The last thing we need to do is let the Clintons, okay, play us against each other. Especially for us mixed families. I mean, come on. What the hell? You're going to turn us against each other when we're both victims of this bitch's system.